Nothing feels more Necromunda than a rolling heist. House Delaque eyes a caravan of promethium moving through Acropolis with an accompaniment of Ogryn. Crypto, Master of Shadow, knew everything ahead of time. He has formulated a plan to hijack the materials and make it out of the sector unscathed. It's coming up next as MGM presents Ashes of Acropolis.
Welcome back to MGM, a great place for casual gaming. Today, the Black Shroud of House Delaque launches an assault against the Slave Ogryn. The campaign table shows that a win is crucial for both gangs to stay viable in the race to the top. A win for House Delaque would put them over the cut line at the end of Week 4. House Delaque had some roster changes during downtime. A Spiker makes his way into the gang. He knows Psychic Scream, Psychic Assault, and Force Blast. The gang also brings in a Piscean Spectre who knows a Perfect Void, which can grant the beast full cover. They elect to bank their remaining 55 credits and depart with 10 active fighters. The Slave Ogryn get to recover 2 of their fighters in downtime. Pinky takes an advancement to increase his weapon skill. Snot takes an advancement and increases his toughness. They add an additional Lobo Slave with Furnace Plates and an Augmetic Fist and Spudjacker. Trog adds blasting charges, and all fighters but one add armored undersuits. I obviously need to purchase more models. The scenario today is Caravan Heist. House Delaque will be attacking today, and the battlefield will be standard with a route the caravan can travel. Crews are custom 10, so all fighters will participate. Tactics cards are custom 2. House Delaque will get 1 additional card for Underdog. For deployment, the Slave Ogryn will place the caravan so it is touching an edge of the battlefield, then place their crews so they are within 12 inches of it. House Delaque can then set up their fighters within 6 inches of any board edge except for the one with the caravan. For special rules, at the start of each turn, before rolling for priority, the defender will move the caravan 6 inches towards the opposite table edge. If fighters are riding on the caravan, they will move with it and gain partial cover. Fighters can spend a simple action to embark and disembark the caravan. If a fighter is within an inch of the caravan, they can spend a simple action to loot it and gain a loot counter. The Slave Ogryn will not take bottle tests, but they can flee voluntarily. If they do, it will be considered a loss for them today. The battle will end when only one gang remains or the caravan reaches the opposite battlefield edge. House Delaque must get 10 loot counters off the caravan or the Ogryn will be victorious. As always, we really appreciate you watching our narrative games. You can support our efforts with just a like on this video. It's time to fasten up those seatbelts. Turn 1 is coming up next. Alright, in this one, House Delaque has put a lot of their fighters towards the opposite end of the caravan. They have deployed some fighters forward. Crypto, the Master of Shadow, does have Infiltrate as his skill, and he has deployed up on the catwalk. The Slave Ogryn dropped first, trying to remain out of line of sight for the most part, and turn 1 coming up, the caravan will move forward 6 inches. We did make a video on how to print and paint this caravan. I'll put a link in the top right if you're interested. And with House Delaque winning that turn 1 priority roll, Virus is going to use his first action to move up and unleash a shot with his autogun. Ballistic skill of 4, the shot misses. Pinky, the underboss, moves forward. He is going to lob a frag grenade. It is strength times 3. 15 inches gives him a lot of range. He is just going to clip the base here. He needs a 5 to hit, and he gets it. There's no knockback, but there is going to be a wound at strength 3, needing 4s. Hack has mesh armor, fails his save, injury die coming out here, and it is going to be a flesh wound. Very lucky for House Delaque. A little bit of a butt pucker there by the men in black. We've got Syntax who moves over. He fires his auto gun down. He is going to land a hit on his ballistic skill of 4. Partial cover making it a 5. He does wound. Furnace plates in the front, however, say no. The underboss Pinky will go down pinned. We move back to the Slave Ogryn, and they've got a Lobo Slave they will activate. This is Boot. He is going to move forward. House Delaque does have a few fighters on this side. He is being precautious, trying to stay out of line of sight. Next up, Switch is going to use both of his actions to move. The Ogryn then send forward Snot. He is a Lobo Slave with paired augmetic fists. Up top, Crypto is going to use his actions to move, and he's going to fire his plasma gun. The plasma gun has to do work here. He dials it up to the max and lands a hit. He fires into the underboss Booger, and at strength 7, he just needs 3s to wound. He does not get the wound. Booger will go down pinned. As we move back to the Slave Ogryn for their next activation, the leader Trog, the overboss, is going to use an action to move, and he is now armed with blasting charges that he can throw at twice his strength. This is a strength 5, 5-inch template weapon, and while he does miss, we are going to roll for a grenade right here. That is good. The blasting charge does scatter over, and it hits the spiker. We roll for a successful knockback, and then the roll to wound requires 3 at strength 5. That's also good. The blasting charge causes 2 damage, and it's a double out of action. A nearby cool check is taken and passed. He rolled up for a 23, and it's just going to be out cold. The Shadow elects to fire back at him, but on a ballistic skill of 5, he misses. He's going to use his second action just to move. Up next for the Slave Ogryn, they elect their newest Lobo Slave to move, sending him forward. Hack in his whip gun, he does have a flesh wound now. He gets to his feet, and then he moves. The Ogryn are going to pass on an activation, electing to stay close to the caravan. The Piscean Spectre activates, tries to cast his word power, but fails, uses his second action to move. The Ogryn activate Booger. He is going to stand and then move behind the moving caravan. That brings turn 1 to a close. And a pretty action-packed turn 1. Unfortunately for House Delaque, that plasma gun up top did miss. We've got to see more out of that against these T5 and 6 Ogryn. We'll have to see what turn 2 holds as the Knocked Ghouls get ready to spring up from the darkness. First order of business, we are going to move the caravan 6 inches, and then the Knocked Ghouls will make their appearance. And the 2 Knocked Ghouls are going to elect to come into the backfield, just trying to look to split the Ogryn up. They do get out of line of sight and more than 6 inches away. Priority rolls for turn 2 will go to House Delaque, and Crypto is going to move forward with his plasma gun. He's going to dial that up to the max again, firing at the Lobo Slave, who is the closest target. He lands a hit, but no wound, and the Lobo Slave can't be pinned. While we pin him anyway, it's not going to matter that much. Just remember, Lobo Slaves can't be pinned. The Ogryn open up the turn with a tactics card quicker than they move, which doubles their base movement. This allows for Trog to get in combat with his arc welder, and he throws 3 attacks. The Knocked Ghoul parries, forcing him to re-roll one of his successful hits. It still connects though, as he only needs 3s. He rolls up for 1 wound, and AP 3 and 3 damage. Injury dice come out for the Knocked Ghoul. It's a serious injury. He gets the coup de grace. The D66 is a 16, so that's actually not bad for House Delaque. They do send one of their fighters forward with his web gun. He is going to attempt to fire it at one of the oncoming Lobo Slaves. The web gun auto hits at strength 5. It does cause a wound, sending him down as if he was seriously injured. An ammo check is required and fails, so the gun does jam up. The Ogryn send a fighter forward while a shot cracks from an auto gun. The shot hits, but this Ogryn is strength 6, so 6s will be needed to wound. Rapid fire, there are 3 dice that need to come out. All of them are going to be unsuccessful. The Lobo Slave avoids pinning and then climbs to the top of the column. Meanwhile, for House Delaque, another auto gun fires, this time at a downed opponent. The shot hits rapid fire. There is 1 wound, needing 5s. A save for furnace plates is failed, and that Ogryn takes a wound. The underboss Pinky continues to move forward, challenging anyone that would come at him. He is going to bait the Piscean Spectre in, rolls up a 3 on his charge, flies over the terrain and makes it into combat, unleashes a ton of attacks. This thing is 4 attacks paired, which becomes 8, plus 1 for the charge and 1 for 2 weapons, making it 10 in total, hitting on 3s. The beast rolls 7 total hits at strength 5, 4s are needed to wound, but the wound roll was not as good. It does just enough damage to chew through his 3 wounds. An injury die comes out, and it's a serious injury. He gets the coup de grace. He will gain D3 experience for lesson learned, however. As we move back to the Ogryn, they are going to move Trog forward. Trog is going to attempt to throw those demo charges again. He is going to land a hit against the Spectre. He is going to run out of ammo this time, though. The Spectre will be knocked back. The wound roll needs 3s and is unsuccessful, so lucky for him, he just goes down pinned. Sync, the Shadow, is going to move up the alley. The Ogryn activate another fighter, another Lobo Slave, sending him forward. Remaining moves go over to House Delaque. The Noctghoul is going to move forward with both of his actions. We've then got the Shadow Switch, who is going to use both of his actions to move as well. This concludes turn 2, and the Ogryn did have a tactics card at the beginning of this game called Chainbreaker, which allows any fighter that has been webbed to become standing and active and take a flesh wound. That will apply to one of their Lobo Slaves in the center of the board. Once again, that plasma gun missing for House Delaque. We're moving into turn 3. The caravan scoots up 6 more inches. As we go to a priority roll, it is going to go to House Delaque once again. Up first, the Spectre, feeling a pretty hard countercharge from the Ogryn, isn't going to take the bait in front of him, decides to loot and then move. The Slave Ogryn activate their Lobo Slave, and he's going to announce a charge, a rather long one, into Hack with the web weapon. The charge is successful as he maxes out, and he moves into combat. He carries 2 weapons, and the Spudjacker is going to hit on a 4, needs 2s to wound as a strength 6, and it fails. Reaction attacks come back across and are unsuccessful. The Ogryn's weapon does cause knockbacks. We do that as well, giving the Ogryn a chance to follow up. Up next, Crypto cocks his plasma gun back into maximum mode, has the leader Trog wide open, anything but 1, lands a hit, strength 7. He is going to cause a wound. An Armored Undersuit could give him a 6-up save here, but that does fail. His wounds are reduced to 0, an injury die is rolled out, and it's a serious injury for Trog. Trog elects to crawl during his activation while the Lobo Slave passes his nerve check. Staying with House Delaque, one of the Shadows attempts to shoot his auto pistol. He does fail. Ammo check is going to be good. He elects to move with his second action. Another Lobo Slave swings around to the side of the caravan, and we've got a shot going into combat here. Syntax will aim, offsetting the penalty for being in combat, short range, so we'll need 3s, and the shot's a hit. The autogun is strength 3, so still needs 5s to wound, and we'll get 1. Furnace plates are unable to keep him upright. He takes a second wound, an injury die comes out here, and it's a serious injury. While this is going on, another Lobo Slave is going to use both actions to move, really applying the pressure to House Delaque. Up next, we do have Virus, who rolls up a 3 on his charge into the downed Lobo Slave. He will successfully give him a coup de grace and rolls up for a 41. That will be an old battle wound as that Ogryn goes into convalescence. Some of the Slave Ogryn are good to hang out for now, this Ogryn giving an assist to Trog as one of the Shadows makes his way up the alleyway. Up next, we have another Ogryn with frag grenades, and he is going to launch one at the Noctghoul here. Is going to miss. The ammo check fails. It's going to scatter into the wall, still hitting the Noctghoul. The knockback is failed, and it looks like the wound is going to be failed as well. The Noctghoul immediately passes an initiative check for Spring Up and gets back on his feet and then moves twice. House Delaque has the remaining activations. We do see a successful reload on the web gun, which allows him to fire. Strength 5, hitting that Ogryn, causing a wound, which sends him down webbed. The turn concludes, and House Delaque is going to start running out of time. They do have one loot counter, and they are controlling the center of the board. Once again, the Ogryn do not have to take bottle checks, and that webbed fighter is going to be able to take a flesh wound and become standing and active again for the next turn. Trog gets an assist and therefore will not take a flesh wound as he rolls back over. As we gear up for another turn, the caravan continues to move, scooting some fighters out of the way. Priority rolls hit the deck, and it is finally going to the Slave Ogryn. It's just what they needed, as a charge will come here from that fighter that just stood up from being webbed, and he charges into Virus, swinging 4 times. He misses on everything. Reaction attacks are no good, and while that fight is going on, the Spectre charges into the oncoming Ogryn over on the right flank, unleashes 10 attacks, hitting on 3s. The 6 triggers Shock, which auto-wounds. The other 2 wound as well, so it cuts through his armor with Phase. It's going to do just enough damage to roll out some injury dice, and it is going to be a flesh wound. That does allow for reaction attacks to come back with Augmetic Fist, which hit twice, knocking him back. It does wound twice. Light Carapace armor saves are going to fail with the AP, and the Spectre is going to be taken down with a serious injury. We did take an initiative check here to see if the beast would fall. He passes that and is good. The Ogryn does activate next, taking him out with a coup de grace. The nerf check next door is fine. The Ogryn passes his initiative check to jump down to the floor. The Spectre does roll up for an 11, which is lesson learned. The House of Shadows then activates their Knocked Ghoul, sending him to the caravan. Got to get fighters in position to get loot, as they're not going to be able to take all these Ogryn fighters out. Trog gets to his feet, House Delaque playing over here, and as he makes that simple move, I am going to move that fighter away. This sets him up for House Delaque's next activation as Crypto fires his plasma gun. The shot does hit, but it is going to once again fail to wound. Trog does go down pinned. Crypto is going to use his next action to get on his feet and start moving to the caravan. The Ogryn announce a charge from boot, and it is going to check up just short here, but he is going to cut off the House Delaque fighter trying to make his way to the caravan. Another House Delaque activation sends one of their fighters within an inch of the caravan, and he is going to loot. The Ogryn continue to activate fighters, sending them up the center of the board towards the caravan to catch up. A successful initiative check is taken here. He rolls up for a 6 to get out of combat. He is then going to use his second action to loot the caravan. The Ogryn did take an initiative check for reaction attacks, but failed. There are 3 loot counters off the caravan right now as the web weapon shoots into the Ogryn. The Strength 5 template weapon once again sends the Ogryn to the floor webbed. The fighter then moves towards the caravan, and House Delaque has the rest of the activations, as one of the shadows here is going to attempt to jump down, is going to fail an initiative check and plummet to the bottom, takes a Strength 3 hit that does not cause a wound. And that House Delaque fighter falling in a very precarious position with one of the Ogryn just on the other side of the wall. The last activation goes to one of their shadows as they move him back around the board edge. As the turn comes to a close, House Delaque is rapidly trying to pull loot off the caravan. They have 3 counters off so far. They need to get to 10, and there's approximately 2 turns left in this game. The webbed Ogryn will return to his feet, taking another flesh wound. The caravan continues to barrel down the street, moving House Delaque fighters out of the way as it goes. Priority rolls come out, and it's a tie, so we are going back to House Delaque. And the most critical shot of this game coming from Crypto and his plasma gun, as he is pointed directly down at the Lobo Slave. He needs anything but a 1, fires rapid fire due to his lower toughness, and the shot is a miss. This allows the Lobo Slave to charge in to the Delaque fighters. 4 attacks come out with 2 of them hitting. At strength 6, it just needs 2s to wound. Both are going to wound. Injury dice come out. It is an out of action, and the Spudjackers roll up for a 66, killing the fighter. Nearby cool checks need to be taken. One of them just passed on a 6. The other one will be successful as well. House Delaque gets their shadow out of harm's way from this Ogryn over here, who now just elects to pass. House Delaque, kind of pissed at this point, the Noctghoul launches an assault into the back of the Ogryn. He hits on everything with his paired claws, and then all but 2 wound with the lower toughness. So many injury dice come out here from the wounds, sending the Ogryn out of action. We roll up a D66 for the Lobo Slave, and it's a 56. That's a potential captured result for a runaway Ogryn. The Ogryn are just going to pass on their remaining activations, as most of the damage here is done. House Delaque is not going to be able to get the loot off to win this game. Using loot as a simple action, they go around and collect as much as they could, but when one of those Delaque fighters was taken out of action, the loot tokens were removed with him. The game comes to a close with that fighter losing his token, the beast losing his token, and House Delaque only able to get about 4 tokens off the caravan before it scoots off the board. The Slave Ogryn are going to take a victory today, and thankful to get out of this sector with what they have intact. Be sure to stay tuned for the post-game. It's coming right up. Alright, Caravan Heist in the books. You always see people post about playing this scenario and what a lot of fun it is, and I wholeheartedly agree. This was a very fun scenario to play out. The Slave Ogryn in this game, they had the toughness, they had the wounds, and with no bottles, they just had the staying power to make it really difficult for House Delaque to win this game. That said, I do wish we would have played this maybe on a 4x4 to allow a few more turns, as towards the end, House Delaque definitely had the game in their favor. They just ran out of time. On a 3x3, it's a very short route. Maybe if I did this again, I would recommend sending the caravan from corner to corner. For tactics cards, Chainbreaker's really good for Slave Ogryn. They can get out of webbed and just take a flesh wound and immediately become standing again. And if you have Iron Man, which is a skill, the flesh wounds really don't count against their toughness. Also, quicker than they look, getting 2 times your base move while making a charge. That one is really good too. The Ogryn can really launch into combat. That was something that I really wasn't expecting when placing the Noctghouls. All in all, this is definitely a scenario I would recommend playing. For the Slave Ogryn, they'll get 50 credits in 1 rep. They did have a few injuries to note, but all of it just means convalescence, so we will be seeing them in the next report at full strength. House Delaque, on the other hand, did suffer a death. This loss does put House Delaque out of the championship running for this season, but we have learned several things about them that we can apply for the next one. The man of the match in this one goes to Booker, as he was able to successfully take out one of the Noctghouls. He then pinned another Noctghoul with a frag grenade and prevented him from getting up the board and causing more damage, potentially taking loot tokens. And that's all for this one. Really hope you enjoyed this presentation of Necromunda. Supporters Club, your names are on the screen now. Really appreciate your support. It's by no means necessary. If you've watched the video this far, you've done more than enough to support the channel, so just leave us a like. I am totally good with just that. We will see you in the next one. Take care.